Prison Rape Elimination Act.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Spies. I'm Program Director. I work at the facility in Shakopee. I work primarily with the case managers and elected.
And do you want us to just take this away?
Yeah,
Oh, we got somebody online now?
Yeah. We do have people.
Oh, great.
Yeah, some tech
Okay,
stuff they're
we
working.
can hear now.
Oh, they can hear now. Okay.
Yes.
All right, we're good. All right. Yeah, so I think, Angel, we'll come back to you about the education and updates, after the presentation, if that's all right. Okay.
Sounds good.
So if, Liz and Gino, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we thought we'd be pretty informal here. Small group. And we brought some stuff also to show you. So we thought we'd just start by sort of talking a little bit about how PREA work falls within the department. And then just talk a little bit about what the process is, what's the materials that are going out, particularly to the incarcerated folks around PREA. But ask us questions.
Yeah.
We probably have more information than you want to know. I think to start with, just sort of understanding, both Gino and I are fairly new into our roles over PREA as such here. So I have been for the last 4+ years, the Director of Victim Services and Restorative Justice. And under Victim Services, the part of PREA that happens there is connecting individuals with PREA advocacy in the community. So the work around advocacy stuff, and I'll talk a little bit more what that looks like, falls under Victim Services. All of the other PREA work, so investigations, audit, compliance work, that all falls under the statewide PREA coordinator, which is Gino's area. And we're still working out what does it mean that I am the director of PREA. I'm not quite clear. I've been in that role about 6 months.
But we do work really well.
We work. I would say it's more like I'm support to Gino, is kind of what that means. But Gino really runs all of our PREA investigative and compliance work.
Yeah.
So I think it might make some sense to talk about the investigative work first.
Yeah.
And then I can then talk about advocacy stuff from there. Do you want me to start with advocacy? I'm a little more discreet.
Yeah, well,
Maybe I'll do my stuff first.
yeah, either way.
So, and I brought just a couple, so what happens is that whenever somebody reports a PREA event to any staff or contractor, one of the things that they're supposed to do is to offer PREA advocacy services. And one of the things that we did, we have this very basic brochure, like because what is advocacy? Like, nobody knows. So right. So to offer somebody, you want to talk to an advocate, it's like, what does that mean? So we created this a fairly simplistic brochure. So we said, you don't even have to explain it to them, right? I mean, you can give them the brochure. And it basically says, some stuff around privacy, right? What it is, ways we can help, things we cannot do, right? Yeah, because we cannot get you a single cell assignment. Okay, right. That is not what advocacy is about. And then some basic contact information. So if you want to see this brochure, so that's to be handed out whenever somebody reports, whether they want advocacy services or not, they get the brochure. And then at any point in time, they can then ask for advocacy services. So what our unit does is, since 2022, and I came into the department in 2021. So starting in 2022, we have transitioned all PREA advocacy to outside community-based agencies. That is considered the best practices under PREA. That wasn't happening prior. So we have
Kind of agencies.
Sexual assault.
Oh.
Yep.
So you transferred all PREA victim.
So what happens is this. So we have 20 community-based sexual violence advocacy organizations around the state. So it's things like the Sexual Violence Center, right? They have an office in Minneapolis and Shakopee, right? Scott County. But we also have, Oasis of Love, which works primarily focused on African-American community, American Indian Prison Project, so 20 different community-based advocacy programs are under MOU with us, and we have limited annual plan agreements with 20 of them. A couple of them don't. One is the Mille Lacs Tribal Program is one of those, and just because of the stuff between the tribes and the state, they have declined the contract, but they're under MOU with us, right? And so what happens is that if somebody says, yes, I'd like to speak to a community-based advocacy program, what we do is we ask, and it's typically at Shakopee, it's through the case managers. We ask them to ask the incarcerated person to sign a very limited release of information so we can release their name to the community-based advocacy program to make the connection. And so, and that will also, so we also look at a few things to do a matchup. So if we have somebody who's reported PREA wants advocacy and they're going to be released, say in the next 6 months, and their presumed county of release is like Mille Lacs, we'll try and hook them up there so we can have better continuity of services. As versus starting with one person, then you release, and then there's a different local program. Sometimes we'll, if we'll talk with folks about whether they want a culturally specific program. We have some culturally specific programs who work with us, that kind of thing. So we'll try and make a matchup. It's also with what availability our local programs have. Some of these programs are very small. And so we will say, do you have the capacity to take a referral? And if they say yes, we get the release of information. We send the information, the name of the person out, the name of the caseworker, and then they work through the caseworker to set up a confidential call with the individual and then provide advocacy from there. And some of our advocacy is they meet with them once, have a discussion, and that really feels like that's the end of what they need. We have other folks who have been working, for a year or so on a regular basis, providing advocacy services. And then what our staff does is we provide support to the advocacy organizations. So a lot of them, particularly before this relationship was set up, had very little information about prison, right? And there are just some things about, trying to do advocacy in prison that are not intuitive. So, so like trying to, so we'll do those things. Or if there's, like, for instance, I think at one point in time, I don't know why it got set up this way, but that it was happening during the lunch time so that the person was having to have a bag lunch every time. And it's sort of like, okay, let's just talk about this. And they're like, can you split your time? And here's the ways to think about this, right? And the advocacy program had no clue, right, that that's what was going on, right? So we'll try and right? And we also do training every other month. We do training with our advocacy programs to sort of answer, and also some networking amongst them as they can problem solve, et cetera. So that's the primary stuff. The other thing that we have done is we have 2 different organizations, community organizations, who come in and do a trauma healing support group and we choose people off that list, 3 people who have asked for PREA advocacy. And so we offer to them if they want to be in the support group. And we've been running that for years now, right? Yep. And so at Shakopee, so they come in and do it in person. They run them as about 10 weeks. I think there's been
Yeah, and they alternate. There's the 2 organizations alternate. I'll do it.
Yeah, so it's Oasis of Love, which they're actually based out of North Minneapolis, we're primarily in the African American community, and then a Sexual Violence Center are the 2 organizations that are running the group down there. And then the other thing that's going on, that it's actually not set up through us, but American Indian Prison Project actually goes in about 4 times a month and does either ceremonies or educational stuff. And a lot of their stuff focuses on sexual violence as well. And they're one of our referral organizations. They work primarily when we have somebody who wants to work specifically with a Native American advocate, we'll hook them up with American Indian Prison Project folks.
Question. Well, one, do you grant money to these folks to do this work?
No, it comes out of our budget.
Oh, okay. And then what about youth? Do kids in our juvenile justice facilities get these services?
That doesn't come under us because there's not DOC, right? So we're under the prisons and,
Right.
right, and that's, yeah.
So
So not even Red Wing?
oh, yeah, Red Wing falls under.
Right, oh, I
under-
thought you meant, I thought you meant young women, yeah, so Red Wing,
Well, yeah, I do
Yes.
mean, because DOC licensed them, so
Right, license
therein
them.
lies a bigger issue.
right, so that's the thing. So the facility, yes, no, we also do have a program that has also gotten the background clearance. We use Hope Coalition, which is in Red Wing, is our advocacy program for the Red Wing facility, both the minimum adult and the juvenile facility.
So nobody's monitoring necessarily PREA compliance in juvenile
Well,
facilities?
we will hit that up on the PREA compliance
Yeah.
issues. Yeah, so there are some issues here and
Yeah.
that's, yeah, so there are very different regs around what happens with compliance and auditing within the prison system that do not, while they're supposed to be in compliance, there's no auditing of
Right.
non-prison facilities.
Which means there's,
Well, they
So-
typically are audited through the 2960. So that licensing piece that we are, our own inspection unit here in the DOC goes out and
what was that at once, how frequent was that
I
again?
think it's,
Once a year
I
or
want
something?
to say it's once a year or every 2
It's
years. It might be
biannual, unless
biannual.
it's, there's a problem, then they'll go.
Yeah, so it's a biannual licensing piece that they come in and there's different pieces with like, for example, abusive allegations that come forward are typically fall under that mandated reporting rule. So the 2960 is kind of really viewing that part.
Well,
For our state facility, Red Wing.
2960 really doesn't deal with PREA like PREA deals with.
Right.
So,
Right.
that's-
Yeah, and
we name
DHS
that?
may be
That's a
involved
huge
as
issue.
well
Yeah.
on that too.
so that goes to Corey's point about
Yeah,
there really isn't PREA in the DOC licensed facilities
For kids.
for kids,
yeah,
for kids.
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, yeah, right, and I
Other
think,
than Red Wing, I would say, because we do
Right.
actual audits, we do PREA audits in Red Wing. They fall under our enforcement piece for investigations and those kind of things.
yeah, so it is a very different world, right? So that's, when I say it's not under our purview, it's really under licensing. What's under our purview is the DOC facilities.
I will say that both Liz and I have talked probably and worked a little bit, starting to reach out to, so just understanding our roles, taking in my role as the statewide PREA coordinator, basically is oversight over PREA across the state. So learning my role first, foremost, Minnesota DOC, and then now we started to work with our licensing inspection unit about how do we branch out to become more involved in our county jails, which a lot of them, they only really have to follow technically the PREA rules if they're contracted with us as a state, like they're taking our inmates in their facility.
That doesn't make sense.
It
does
doesn't, and that's a learning piece for us. It's like, okay, so the compliance factor is really driven by dollars.
Yeah.
So federal dollars, and that, so if you're not, overall, it's still a federal law and that you still need to comply, but the
There's
enforcement
no-
piece
There's
of
no
it,
enforcement.
we don't have that enforcement piece in our world. So
Do the
other
feds
than
ever
through
question
licensing.
Minnesota about that?
No, I mean, that's just it. The federal compliance work is all focused on the prison facilities themselves. So one of the things is that, we've been keeping stats and I'll talk about,
Yep.
two other things just about advocacy and then we'll kind of get into this side of it. We've also worked with the librarians across our system and based on recommendations from the advocacy programs we're working with, we have been increasing the library materials that are available around sexual violence and trauma healing. And so that's been, and we actually secured a small amount of grant funding and purchased a number of materials through that to go out. And we started with Shakopee and then we've now distributed tailoring some stuff more specific to the populations, obviously, within facilities. And then the other thing, we have this flyer that's posted and this is about local resources around advocacy. It's not PREA specific, but it includes both domestic and sexual violence, and support, and we do it by facility. So this is Scott County specific information. And this is posted in the facilities,
Each living unit would have that posted.
posted as well as
So
like
they have the
transition. A lot of
availability.
places have it. I don't know if people want to see that. So
Yeah,
that,
Jeff, you've handed these out too before, which are,
Oh,
these are
so you have-
great.
okay.
They're very
and this
awesome.
is the brochure there. And then the other thing I'll just tell you is just in terms of statistics, we started looking at, when we went to outside advocacy. So from this is calendar year 22, we had 46 total referrals into us from the from Shakopee.
In what time?
In the calendar year 22, 29 of those were for prior victimization, right? Because we deal with people who report prior victimization, right? So that's the largest category we're seeing at Shakopee.
Can I
In
just ask a clarifying, prior victimization in a facility or period?
period. So they could come in and say, when they're, prior to coming, that they were sexually assaulted, right? In the weeks prior to coming to jail. Or it could have been further back. It could have been while they were in police custody or in the jail facility. Or we've had some that, had been in a halfway house, release being revoked back in, and they report it when they arrive at Shakopee.
And one of the first things we do, probably it has to happen within 72 hours, is we do we do several different intake procedures, but one of them in our world is the PREA screening. So it's an initial PREA screening, asks those questions about prior victimization, prior abuse, like being the perpetrator, several other factors that might indicate like the vulnerability of a person, whether it's how they identify, it goes on several different questions that will, and now more recently then we actually have developed a weighted scoring system. So it kind of, and based on another model across the country, but what that will indicate for at the end of that screening is whether or not somebody we would categorize them as a potential victim or a potential abuser. So then that kind of goes with our housing, our work placements, all those kind of things will kind of determine whether or not, somebody is going to be housed in this area or that area, and then whether or not they need additional resources or those kind of things. So, yeah, and that happens when they first come in, and then a case manager, Jeff's group will follow up within 30 days, review that screening, and then
Is there any
determine.
way to red flag?
Yes. So if
Okay.
those pieces, if I was to complete a screening and there were those indicators, it automatically subscribes and sends emails to case manager, a lieutenant, maybe to follow up, behavioral health. So everybody is being notified as somebody comes in that might be more vulnerable than somebody else.
We have mechanisms within our database to alert or I can run a query on if any of those are overdue past 30 days and make sure that people are following up on them. But so we don't miss folks.
Angela, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there a way to get a copy of that screening
Tool.
process or form that's used?
Protocol and the tool.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can send you both the
Yeah.
screening tool and the protocol. Yeah.
Yeah.
thank you.
Who administers them? Who on staff is?
So, trained staff, they have to go through a
Okay.
training, they have to go through the training to be able to administer the screenings. And then the screenings are really kept, the screening results are kept to a kind of a closed group of people. So it isn't like just any staff
Goes
can
in their
go in and
file.
view,
Yeah.
what somebody's background might be. So it goes, we want it to go to the right people so they get the right resources. But it is,
And a lot
It's
of
a
the
limited
and
that
a
can
lot
see
of the
this.
screeners are medical staff. And that's actually shifting over now with some of the changes.
until very recently, it was
Yeah.
always health services staff. But then just in the last 3 months, we're beginning to expand it a little bit just because we've had a huge influx of transfers out of Stillwater. So the workload has been greater, but they still need to, go through that training. And that indicates, all those scores are, when somebody is a screener, but once that screening is completed, the work that's indicated in the screening is not really done by the screener. So we just want the screener to have a good understanding, but the follow-ups are gonna be with the professionals.
Can I add one thing to that? That sort of last 3 months is actually a very finite practice because of the volume of moves, actually unrelated to Shakopee entirely. It's all related to the mail facility moves and the phased closure of Stillwater. So I suspect that the practice has not changed in Shakopee.
But one of the things that has happened because of that shift is this discussion where I think it's not going to go back
It is
to
gonna go back.
medical in a number of facilities because the screening happens upon intake and at each transfer. So every time somebody transfers to a new facility, the screening is run yet again.
That change was time limited. It is not a permanent change.
Right,
Okay.
but yeah, so it may be more permanent than in some facilities.
Are there, at Shakopee, are there ever men that doing these screenings or is it women doing them?
You probably know who's.
Case managers will do the follow-ups, and in intake, I can't say for sure. When somebody first comes in, I would be hard pressed to say that I'm answering questions when we first meet somebody. But in terms of a follow-up, the follow-ups that Gina was talking about, it'll be their case manager follow-up,
The case manager may be.
maybe a male.
But the initial screening is just done by anybody?
No, it has to be the trained person with the, I just don't know who those.
But it can be a
trainers-
man.
It could be.
Because I know if that were me,
So-
I would not be comfortable
Right,
having a
let me-
man ask me stuff
Let me
like
be
that.
very clear, okay? I'm sorry, I was trying to be
It's
clear
okay.
on this. I can't imagine that we do that. But I'm not gonna say that we don't. So I'm more certain than not than
Probably.
that it's
It's women doing
that it's
it.
gender specific.
I hope so. Angela, go ahead.
Thanks again. You mentioned expanding the personnel who are doing the screenings aside from medical. Can you explain how the training of these individuals is conducted and how long it is and what it entails?
Yeah,
It's
so
it's just a big leap, it seems, from like trained medical personnel to someone else. And I'm just wondering who does
Right.
those or what the training looks like.
We've developed a PowerPoint slide, so to speak, and so those that are going to be trained, basically it goes through, it explains the questions that's being asked, what are we and what the background would be on that. Basically, I would say that the screening itself is very basic. It's about 14 questions, 13, excuse me. It's a yes or no piece. It's not going into, it's meant to be very objective, not subjective, meaning the screener does not make the decision. It's an objective tool that's weighted. So the score that comes out at the end is determining whether or not somebody is more, a potential victim or a potential perpetrator.
And it might be helpful, I mean, we'll get you over the screen tool itself to help a look at it. It's not like,
Yes.
tell us about your sexual victimization.
Right.
Not at all.
Okay.
That's
That's-
not, what right,
That's where we're expecting behavioral health
to then be
to come in
referral
then
for that
and work
next
with that
discussion.
individual or victim advocacy, those that have the background.
It's based on what are predictive factors that have been developed across the country about what are various characteristics or various experiences that make you more at risk to be victimized or a higher likelihood of perpetration, right? And so it's things like, I'm trying to think, what are they actually? I mean, they do some.
Do you have a history of violent offenses? Now, it's a very basic question. Do you have a history of criminal sexual conduct? Have you been convicted of criminal sexual conduct? That would be a question. So somebody might, and often does, say no, but the case manager then has to come in, that case manager follow-up is now going to the base file. Maybe that person lied on the screening and was has been convicted of a CSC crime, which makes them actually both more of potential abuser, but then also a potential victim. They're not looked, very highly. So,
They also look at things like LGBTQ status. They look at, so some of those sort of identity. Yeah, so
Mhm.
those kind of factors that go in there. And then based on that screening tool, that's then referrals to behavioral health or to, right, potentially. And so the screeners are not looking to delve into people's personal history and really training them away from that. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like in order for the tool to be effective, it has to be administered in a way where a person feels safe telling the truth. And that's why I'm saying, like, even at that initial stage, it seems, especially, I mean, I'm only
Yeah.
thinking of women. I really don't know how
Right.
men, as much about men, and trauma and that kind of stuff, but I do feel like with women, and I'm sure Liz, you know all about this, so I know your background. But it does seem like we should be thinking about gender when we're figuring out how this intake process happens.
I will find out our process and respond here. And so when you get the notes here, you'll have that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be critical.
No, I
either.
think you
I'm
should
just
be
trying
though.
to-
I think you
just
make a
trying to
very valid
understand.
point.
I think it's
Yeah.
a great point. We do.
Yeah.
If we do have that. I have no clue about why, and I think that it's very legitimate to push back on that. Absolutely.
I would say the likelihood of a female administering the screening to a male is much more likely than a male administering it to a female.
Yeah,
You
I know from my own research that men are more truthful with women interviewers and women are
Right,
more
so there's
truthful with women.
definitely a
interviewers. So
difference here.
that's, yeah.
So if I may, I'll just kind of keep going. Just to give you an overall picture of how PREA works in the facilities. So upon intake, and we do this initial screening, but we also do an education on what PREA is. So for any new incarcerated person coming into both either Shakopee or into St. Cloud, they're given basically a basic education kit, which I brought, which includes our brochure on like how to report, if you're abused, all these types of things, which I'll pass several of these around. You can actually
Can you
take
see
one
the
of them.
packet too?
But they also will watch a comprehensive video that kind of talks about, that first incarceration piece where you maybe have these thoughts and not sure of how I can get support. And that's where it really reinforces like how to report when something's going on. And then this is an example of
Posters that go up in various.
posters that are throughout the facility. You'll find them by every phone bank typically. You'll find them in every living unit. You'll find them in typically on a bulletin board in a behavioral health office. You might find it in a nursing station. You might find it, So these, we put a significant amount of these out. So then, IPs of course are able to write the number down. They know that they have confidentiality. They can communicate to the ombuds office. They can communicate to our PREA hotline, which we get, that my team works on the hotline calls. So basically anybody has access to the phones at, the majority of the time. Would you agree, Jeff, on that?
Oh, yeah.
Even if you were in a segregation cell, you can ask to make a PREA hotline call. They'll bring the phone to you. You
Can they tell me no if I'm that person?
No.
No.
Do they?
Sorry, what?
Can they tell me no?
If you're
Because
in
I'm being
segregation
so
and
behaviorally
no.
messed up.
they can.
Okay, so if I'm out in general population
Mhm.
and whatever time of day or whatever shift, can I ask to?
You can go to,
Call the-
like, you usually can go to a phone bank, all the IP phones,
Okay,
and it's a 1-800 number. It doesn't cost them anything.
Well, nothing costs. And then also star 77 is a routes directly to the community-based advocacy program in each facility. So
So, yeah, so if they're not, if they make the hotline call, but then they also feel like they need some advocacy services, or maybe they don't trust the hotline call, they can call the *77, and it goes immediately out to a third-party resource.
So at
Those
Shakopee,
contractors.
each
they can add-
facility routes to a different
Okay.
sexual violence community-based program. So in Shakopee, *77 will route you to the sexual violence center,
Okay,
right? So, you know,
and
so-
that's the start,
Star
what did you say?
77.
Okay,
Yeah,
and so that routes directly to that program. Like, so if you're in Stillwater, if you punch *77, it'll go to Campus Health.
there's really three types of reporting that they could do. I mean, via phone. They could call the ombuds office and they could remain anonymous. They could, or they could say their name. Ombudsmen are also within the facilities on a fairly regular basis. And then they could call our PREA hotline, which seems to be like the normal approach. So then my team, we get the call. It's a recorded line that somebody just leaves a message to because it's 24/7. We check those daily. So it's usually the response is typically within hours. It might be 48 hours if it's the weekend. But somebody's going to review that. And then we report it back to the facility that, hey, you have an issue. This is so-and-so's got a, you know, an allegation here. So then my team would oversees how those investigations happen. So for example, if somebody makes an allegation at Shakopee and they start an investigation, the investigation is actually performed by the facility trained investigators. My team, I have two regional staff, one north, one south, and they're reviewing all those cases that are going on at any given time. So kind of quality control,
Follow up about
support,
that?
yes.
The people that you reference, the investigators, are they housed in Shakopee? So they're like, do they office there? Are they,
Yes,
do they have other roles there?
yep.
So what other roles?
So you would have, so it depends on what type of allegation. So all allegations of abuse, which would be criminal, would be handled by our Office of Special Investigation. So that's
that's if I'm reporting the staff is messing
staff
with me.
or another inmate has sexually assaulted you.
Okay, that,
That's going to be handled by our Special Investigative
okay, I
Unit.
call the hotline and I say, staff person, where does it go from there immediately?
Yeah,
Most of the time, if that call comes into their hotline, then there's going to be a conversation on a staff assault. You're most likely going to also flag the associate warden.
yes.
But it goes to OSI, to the,
So they do the
they do
investigation.
the initial and they may loop in local law
Local
enforcement.
law enforcement.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So it's not the facility investigating themselves.
No.
Okay,
But
If if there is a staff allegation, then our senior leadership at the facility.
Yeah.
As well, so they're.
they're made aware, but they don't investigate.
No.
No,
Good.
no.
not-
And the Office of Special Investigations they might be officed at Shakopee, but they operate, basically, they're
Under central office.
under central office. So that's who they report.
But if it's a harassment type allegation,
Harassment type of allegations are handled within the facility through trained investigators. And
Even
that's,
if it's a staff on,
yep, even if it's a staff on, yep.
Angela, I know I saw you put your hand down. I was waiting for a break
Oh.
to, yeah, did you still have a question or?
Sorry, thank you again. Yeah, you mentioned that there's a couple different pathways how the calls are handled. Do we know, are the advocacy groups, are they run through the state or are they contracted? Are they private?
so
Yeah, go ahead.
the advocacy groups, they're nonprofit organizations. And, you know, we have one tribal organization, right? So they're nonprofits, community-based, they're funded through a variety of nonprofit ways, right? We have what we call $5,000 annual plans with them to try and help defray some of their costs for providing these services to our incarcerated folks. So they're very tiny, right?
Right, yeah.
Right, but,
Do we know the names of them?
yes, I can send you the names. There's 20
Those are the 20 you were
organizations.
talking
Yeah.
about, right? Okay.
Earlier,
Yeah.
yeah.
20, okay. Thank
There's
you.
20 of them, and they're sexual violence organizations that do this. That's what they do on a regular basis. They all have hotlines. That's why they're able to take 24-hour calls coming out of the facilities. So that's why we're routing to them. So people can call *77 and report to them. And then they follow, right? Yeah, their own protocols about how they would report that into whom, depending on what the call is.
And we also take in third-party reporting, so if,
If they talk
if
to
a
a family
resident
member.
is not comfortable doing any of those options, and they told mom back at home, I'm really feeling very vulnerable, or what have you, I want to, I don't know how to report this. The third party can call the hotline, can email us directly right from the DOC website. And it comes right to us. They can reach out to ombuds person as well. So there's several reporting processes that are in place. And we do get third party reporting. I wouldn't say regularly, but it does happen.
What
Thank
data
you.
collection do you do on this? And evaluation?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. It really, it's a lot, but it's very comprehensive as well. So we put out, and you could go on the DOC website. I didn't bring one with me, but we put out an annual report every year that's required through the National PREA standards. And that reports out all allegations. It reports out like trends. It reports out what our response has been. Like, for example, what are we doing for, to meet the evaluation of that data. So every year we look at that data. Okay, do we have issues here? What can we do better? Maybe it's increasing camera footage. Maybe it's, new training for staff, those kind of things. One of the things that most recently that I was actually very glad to inherit was that the legislation put out a lot of money to the PREA group. So we've actually hired, there's 4 different positions that were never there before. It was just one person trying to maintain this, the law. And it's very difficult because there's a lot of different pieces to it. There's investigations, there's the data piece, there's the education piece, there's the reporting piece, there's all kinds. So now with these 4 staff, we're able to kind of focus our areas on, one person focuses primarily on audits. So, okay, what are we doing? How is each facility meeting the audit standards? And they'll work directly with them. And then I have 2 that work primarily with just investigators, reviewing investigators, encouraging them to maybe go back and interview again, and, kind of a quality control piece there. And then the 4th person is our data analyst, which draws in all the data, reports to the Bureau of Justice on our annual statistics, because that's a requirement as well. And then we put out our annual report.
And each facility has to go through a federal audit every 3 years. So we're working for our year starts up September,
August to August is a year cycle, and it's a 3-year, yeah.
And so for last year's cycle, it was St. Cloud, Willow River, Togo, Lino Lakes, and Stillwater all went through federal audits.
Which are right now we're in this corrective action period. So there's always something that's coming out after an audit that says, for example, the screening tool. We had a screening tool that we'd used for the last 15 years, but it wasn't a weighted tool. So there was the subjectivity that was kind of brought in. And to your point about training, if we don't have somebody properly trained and they can subjectively add information, you know, you're gonna not be as accurate as you
So we
would be.
changed.
So
And those audit reports then are published once they're final, but they're like 100 and some pages long.
they're also on the website.
Yeah, on the website.
So before that, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask about the report before we get
Yep.
beyond that.
Yep.
Is the report that you put out, does it include summary data like on women specifically?
Yeah,
It's a really high level report. Let's just be really clear about that. But
yeah, it would have
it does
every
talk about
facility
each facility.
listed, number
so it
of,
would be
number of
by
allegations, you know, number of substantiated, number of unsubstantiated cases, those kind of things. So it just encompasses every facility.
yeah, but it's very high level with it's a 3-year look back, isn't it? The last 3 years of data.
Yeah,
can have
yeah,
some-
we
some
pulled
little
3
bit of
years worth
comparison.
of data on it, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask about the assessment tool. I know it's changed now, but so before there, it wasn't at the federal level, Priya saying here, you must use this, or they had,
Well,
No.
that's not quite how
That's
things
wild.
function.
okay.
Very interesting. I'll talk a little
It's
bit
just
about it too.
So one of the things is the PREA law has been in place for, over a decade, right?
Long, way.
Well, no, it's,
Yeah.
what is,
20 years, 20 years.
is it 20 years?
Last
Yeah,
year
we're
was
just coming
its,
up.
I think,
It
20th
just seems
year.
not quite that long, but it is 20 years. But, so it's been sitting out there and it's a fairly complicated statute.
Oh, yeah.
And so then what happens is that there still is to some degree, the National PREA Resource Center. And one of what they do is really provide tools to sort of help states.
It's a wonderful resource
Huge
center.
resource. Of course, it was defunded in the last 6 months. And
And it wasn't even mandatory stuff. They were just supporting.
Yes.
Yeah,
you
it's
could-
like- so
you
they
could
would
pull
give you the
trainings and
trainings, you could-
Videos and.
Okay.
but also pull opinions for people who have challenged and, have raised questions like, what does this mean? And so,
But one of the things I've discovered in my short tenure is there are certain things they're not putting themselves out there to be probably held liable on it. And that's a screening tool and the investigative training. They'll give you a very broad picture of what needs to happen, but not, this is the training you need to happen for your investigators. So I think it's,
Used to.
yeah.
Yeah, Andy Moss was her.
But that's gone.
But sexual assault
We
is
still,
so.
yeah.
It's just,
So,
like,
like
this is
brain
one
food,
area
yeah.
where it's like very, very, like, there shouldn't be any subject.
Right,
And
right.
anyways, you guys
We
know,
do
but-
use we have used the Moss group in the past and how,
Bring him back.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Carrie, actually, to your point, do you know Carrie Gerlicher?
Yeah.
Carrie used to work was
Yeah,
director of our
OSI,
OSI. She actually does a lot of the trainings for the Moss group.
So is Jeff still there?
What's the last name?
He used to work here, he was
Is it
assistant commissioner.
Scorba?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure, but.
He and Carrie do a dual training.
Mhm.
And actually, they're scheduled to work with the OSI group in February, I think they're coming. So my group of investigators will also attend that. And then what we'd like to do, it's kind of early enough yet, but we've got some grant dollars. We'd like to pull the facility educators or facility investigators and have another training with them specifically.
What does
So-
the training look like? Is it a specific curriculum? Is it a certain amount of hours? Is it like a 1 hour thing? I
It's
mean,
a
what is
full
it?
day
So one full day.
curriculum. And it focuses, I've just spoken with Carrie about it. I haven't taken the trainings, but it really differentiates like what is a criminal investigation? What is an administrative investigation? What is sexual harassment? What is sexual assault? Where do we, how do these two lanes, there's really two lanes there of investigation. And how do we do that properly? And then cooperate with each other, those that are doing this and this, because we do share that information to a certain extent.
Is that training like an onboarding session that everyone has to do?
Yes.
Or like a once a year
You
thing
cannot-
or what?
You cannot do an investigation, a PREA investigation, unless you've gone through this training. And it's typically, we go through the NIC, which is the National Institute of Corrections.
Okay, and then what about ongoing training after that?
So I actually don't know, because I'm fairly new to this piece, but we talked about
Right,
wanting to
and-
do just refreshers, because there's
Yeah.
certain facilities that may have a lot of investigations going on pretty regularly,
Mhm.
the larger, more
almost
populated, more secure. And
Yeah.
others are doing 1 or 2 a year, if that, you know.
Yeah, and each
so-
of our facilities has a SART team, a sexual assault response team, and they meet on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, the PREA team from central office does is work with them to run, drills, right? Because we can have facilities that haven't had a sexual assault, right, in years,
Mhm.
right? And so, so really running scenario drills so people know, you know, what are the right.
We did a recent one at Lino Lakes, a tabletop exercise where we involved local law enforcement was there, the local victim advocacy group was there. And so all the players were there, the OSI investigators, and we all just kind of walked through, what's your step? Okay, then we go through our checklist. We have several sexual assault response checklists that would go, you know, from the first responder to they hand it off to the watch commander, and it goes to the PREA compliance manager at the facility, which is the associate warden, to the warden. I mean, it's very.
And there are questions that come up, like, you know, so if somebody reports a sexual assault, you know, like, there's questions around SANE exams, right? You know, and the SANE exams all are transports out, right, to the local hospital facility. But, you know, a SANE exam after 10 days, right? So, right, so like, you know,
Yeah, it's
somebody
only
might
good for a
report,
certain
right, so
period
then
of
it's like,
time.
you know, so like, but, you know, that's pretty specialized knowledge, right? So it's sort of like, so we've had a couple instances where people are like, well, let's just default and send them for the SANE exam, and it's like, no, don't do that. Because they're gonna get to the hospital and the same person's gonna go, this happened, you know, 14 days ago, they're gonna send them right back to facility, right?
And I know one of the recommendations from the, what is it, the ombuds person that did the audit a few years back was that people weren't being adequately informed of their right to refuse SANE exams.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
How is that?
I think that's gotten
That's
better.
list, I
Yeah.
mean, if I was to be able to pull up our checklist for the health services portion of it, there's the piece on the SANE exam, and it's like, do you accept to go or do you refuse? So it's there, it's, you know, it has that, the person is asked that question.
And
Do
we've
you want to
also,
go or-
we've also been working to, which is, one of the gaps that was happening is that, like informing people that they have a right to have outside advocacy present for a SANE exam and for the investigation. Now, so that people know that, I mean, it follows the hospital SANE exam protocol once at the hospital.
Right.
So that, right, happens under their, but just to let people know that. And also to have, if OSI is doing the first investigative interview, that they have a right to have an advocate's present, to talk to an advocate prior to that and have present in that thing. And I do know that in the last year, we have been getting those, so we'll get those calls saying they're asking for an advocate, right? And so we've coordinated that with the local community advocacy programs to get in for the investigative portion.
And I think
So
Angela
it is improving.
But yeah,
follow-up question as well.
I want to get back to juveniles before we don't.
Can we, before we do that, can we take Angela's question, because I know that she's a healthcare professional. I'm
Yeah,
assuming it
sure.
relates to this
Yeah.
topic.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry again. I keep, thank
No,
you. Yeah,
that's good.
just for everyone's knowledge, as someone who's performed these exams, just so that people are aware that once they do get to the facility, the medical facility, they can still decline an exam, but sometimes a lot of people feel that it's helpful. Again, this is my own anecdotal experience, but they do have those rights if they enter the facility. So I just want to kind of put a message out there that I wouldn't want that to be a barrier for people who may not want the exam, but still may want to speak with someone in the medical facility.
Right, right.
Okay, so juveniles, first of all, thank you both for being here
Yeah.
and thank you for your openness and not trying to say, oh no, we got this, it's all good, everything's wonderful. And I love what I'm hearing about all the good stuff that's provided to the adults in our our adult facilities, but I am woefully pissed off. We aren't doing it for kids and it's not your responsibility, but it is a glaring neglect on the state's part. Not just DOC, but if DOC says we have kids and we're responsible for kids in care, because we license them. Nobody's doing PREA. I know there's county PREA coordinators who
Yes.
probably aren't getting any of this good stuff you're talking about, or facilities say, oh, we have a designated PREA person who doesn't know Sikkim from fetch. And the kids are not getting SART. There's no SART teams. Maya, do you have a SART team at Anoka?
We do not have a SART team. We do. I know you're kind of saying this, but we do PREA here.
You do PREA, but it's not under the state. So correct me if I'm wrong, Liz and Gino. DOC is responsible for the statewide PREA response as far as the feds are concerned. And everybody's concerned,
Yes.
right? But they're leaving out the juvenile population, except for Red Wing, in terms of PREA and all the things that PREA is supposed to address. So it's up to individual facilities whether they do or don't. And it's probably the Wild West out there in terms of, I remember when PREA came up. I remember when Andy Moss started all the training.
Yeah.
And people were like, what is this? And confusion. That confusion hasn't gone
No,
away.
no.
And people have interpreted it into many ways, but the bottom line is kids aren't getting PREA.
So what would need to happen? A legislative action to mandate
Can you
the
help with
DOC oversees?
Well, I mean, I
the
think this-
juvenile
well,
units, or like what?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I think the difference is, so one of the things that we do, so like if either through the advocacy line or through, right, that, we do this probably a couple times a month.
Yeah.
We'll get a report about, particularly in jails, that's where we get most of our reports, where there's been a PREA allegation and people have come into our facilities and say, I tried to report this when I was at, X jail. And I can tell you, it is not any one jail. It is across the state with jails where they come in and they say, I tried to report this, right? No, I don't think anybody did anything. So what we do is two things. One is we offer pre-advocacy services, right? Because it's a prior victimization. And then the other thing is that what Gino does, we have a protocol by which he then contacts.
We
the PREA
notify the
compliance.
facility head.
Are you talking juvenile? Because I'm still on
If
juvenile.
it came from a
Any
juvenile.
report that would come into us.
About a halfway
about
house, a
halfway
jail, a
house, a
treatment.
jail, or
You're
a.
not gonna get all the reports because we
No.
don't believe kids half the time.
Well, but if we get it,
Especially
if we get it in
certain
any fashion, this is what we do, right? So I mean, there's still a big problem
Yeah.
about what information people have about reporting. But when it does come in, that's one of the things we do is we report it, Gino reports it back to like, either the
The
sheriff,
facility head
or
or
if they
the,
have a PREA compliance person there or an investigator to make sure that they have it and they're gonna follow up with it. And we also then
PREA,
report it to our licensing.
protocol is facility head to facility head. So if somebody at St. Cloud came in and reported that they had been sexually harassed at, this type of, or this jail, then the facility head, St. Cloud would send that
Okay.
notification out. But that's where it dies. That's where.
If I'm a county PREA person responsible for kid facility number 9,
Mhm.
you have no oversight of what I'm
No,
doing or
no.
not. So
But-
really, there's nothing for
Right, it's a
kids.
courtesy, really.
Thank you.
That's a
Yeah.
courtesy
You know,
kind of
'cause
call.
That is an issue we need to change in the state.
The other thing that we've been doing, and this is where we've started conversations, and so I just want to say, I've been in my role about 6 months. uh, On the right, so,
And
yeah, so we're just starting these. Yeah, so like actually meeting with the DOC licensing division around being really clear about these issues, because they do license, right? And so one of the things is just, so we now, whenever these reports come in, we're also sending them over to licensing so that they know that there's been this report. So, and then we've been saying, when you go out to do the inspections, you should be asking the PREA questions, right? To at least, at a minimum, start getting some information about what is your facility doing? Like, who is your PREA compliance manager here? How do you handle things? I mean, like, then this.
right.
So I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm just letting you know, these are
What's
the,
a step?
these are the steps,
Maya
so.
has her hand up
yeah.
as well.
My question was just, Paula, are you concerned essentially, because if we're doing PREA, we do also have to get the pre-audit. So like we had one last year. Are you concerned that like the pre-audit is not doing enough, or is your concern more that like nobody here would even know that I had a pre-audit because nobody's checking. Like, I guess that's what I'm just wondering is like, is your
I
concern
didn't realize they had.
that we're following through, or that what we're following through with, like, do we know that the pre-audits are good is I guess my
All of
question.
that. So if there's no centralized place, and there is now for adults, which is, I love what I'm hearing. We don't have any of that for kids. So like, are they offered services, outside services, kids? It's all of it, Maya. And every facility is going to do it their own way, you know. So you hear that the jail, many times the people don't report or pass on the reports. We know kids are being harmed in our facilities, and 2960 doesn't protect them. And there is no role for, there's going to be a standard, consistent protocol and investigation, pre-investigation for kids in Western Minnesota facility, as there is in Duluth, as there is at Red Wing. There's no standard, and there's no reporting. So if Gino and Liz, who are supposed to be reporting as the statewide, none of that information is going into any statewide thing. So we don't know what's happening, and facilities can say, oh, we have a really good PREA response. And you know darn well that might not be true. So, and then a kid's not going to get an advocate to come see him or her or them, right? Like, where's all that good stuff? Where's all this stuff hanging in facilities? And, you know, this should be in kid language.
So Maya, did you actually had a PREA audit, and a PREA auditor came and completed an audit? Is that what?
Yeah,
is that
2024. So like, that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, I'm thinking about some of the things you're saying, Paula, and it's like, oh, other people aren't going to get access to outside agencies. Well, if you're doing PREA, you have to have that. So like, all of our youth here know that there's an outside agency that they can contact. We cover that in intake. But your concern, I'm understanding, is not so much like, are facilities doing PREA and are they getting the audits? Your concern is that, like, I could tell you that I did PREA, but probably no one's checking. Right?
All of that, even about the audits. I've heard specific situations where somebody says, oh yeah, I went and investigated. Like, you did what? How'd you do it? Blindfolded and, you know,
Right.
done? So it's all of it. If we've got a PREA coordinator and a statewide oversight on PREA and adult facilities, what I'm asking for is we need that for juveniles. And I'm saying for DOC to neglect that population, it is their responsibility because they're licensed. If it's not their responsibility, they shouldn't license them. So, you know, beyond Red Wing, so who's getting all this good stuff that the adults are getting? And I hear you say there are problems there too, but you guys are working it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's working it statewide for kids in our juvenile facilities. Would you say that's a fair assessment? Maya?
You're asking me? Yeah, I mean, there's not like a central person who's kind of, I think, doing oversight. I think, and I assume that discrepancy has to do more with the fact that this was like federal law versus state law, but it doesn't necessarily, like, I agree with you that there's essentially, since there's no central information source, there's a level of like lack of accountability to the public as a whole, if that makes sense.
And to kids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean like a lack, like nobody like in the community could go probably and pull I think technically it's like public data, but it's not like you can't pull my PREA report, you know, like easily. And so the community at large then cannot kind of hold us accountable to how we're treating kids.
And PREA is not, PREA audits or allegations are not represented in the DOC licensing annual reports on facilities,
Probably.
which is so wrong.
Okay.
Right, so
How
I think there are some things that under the DOC itself in terms of and that's partly why we started this conversation. But I mean, very recently, obviously, but about like what does that look like? So I think asking those questions and making recommendations specifically around that licensing would make perfect sense. I would also say that I think that there's a very wide range, depending on what facilities you're talking to. We know this, I interact most frequently with jails. to be honest, because that's where we hear, but also some halfway houses. And it's always been adult stuff, because it's primarily people coming into adult facilities where we hear about this. But, you know, it ranges from people who say PREA doesn't apply to us, which is absolutely not true, right? So that tells you the level of understanding to other institutions who understand and who are actually doing things, right? And everything in between there.
I mean,
So
that makes me
part of the
feel
problem.
really good that Maya, you actually have had a PREA audit. I mean, that's somebody who comes in and does the audit. There's some pretty strict guidelines on all that training. So they're obviously meeting most of the standards. That's good to hear. But when you talk about facility in Bemidji or in Moorhead or somewhere else,
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up? Maya, who did the PREA audit of your facility and how was that arranged?
Okay, so
You know.
her name is very similar to a previous youth, so I always get them mixed up in my head. Her first name is definitely Sonia, and she's from Georgia, so like she's fully a third party, like she's nothing
Out of the
Georgia, I
to
facility.
do with us.
Okay, Was that
Yep.
no, that was
Sharon out
I
of
mean, could
Georgia.
it not be as simple as the DOC mandating as part of their licensing for the facilities that they all get a PREA audit every so often?
It's for all the things that you brought up and everybody has brought up here.
I guess
That
my question, though,
doing an audit
mechanically
doesn't take
speaking,
care
is
of
that
it.
something that the DOC can do without a statutory mandate? That is, because this is all bound up in law and money and all that.
Right, but you know, what an audit does, and because an audit is a pretty thorough, right, and what you're, just by saying they're out of Georgia, I'm assuming she's a federally trained auditor, like we
Yeah.
contract, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it is a legitimate
Yeah.
PREA auditor trained, and it's like,
yes.
it is not a short
Maya,
process,
your
that's 100-page
organization or your
report.
facility made the decision to contract with that person and do it on their own. Nobody made you do that.
Yeah, yes, because technically you can't be PREA compliant unless you're getting audit every 3 years. So I like again, I think this was one of the things I had asked was like, are we talking about the fact that nobody's making us? Is that your concern? Which it sounds like that's a
I
big
think
part of
that's
it. Like,
a really good point. And to
I mean,
your
as a
point, it's like,
starting point, we could just have the DOC ask as part of their licensing, do a check as to whether
Are you
they're compliant.
are you
With the
PREA
three, yeah.
compliant?
But then
And
how
is
do you
that-
check
we know,
to
is,
see-
hold on, is that happening right now?
Well, the audit would tell you
I
that.
think we can get that
Yeah.
answer, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think what's tricky is we're talking about juvenile stuff here without the people who are overseeing the
Right.
juveniles.
Yes.
And that's, we initially tried to have, I think her name is Precious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precious was actually going to be at this meeting, couldn't make
But she
it.
wasn't available, so,
Yeah.
Precious Lowry works for DHS. So it oversees
Okay.
residential.
right, and so
Okay.
it's separate
We're
from us.
missing a
Yes,
big
yes.
part of expertise, right? Like, I don't oversee this area myself, so I'm gonna be honest, I don't know the answer
So
to
maybe
that
can we
question.
ask that question? And
We
see if-
sure can, that's what
Okay,
I'm
perfect.
Yeah, and
taking notes on.
Precious,
I think
Precious
that's
is
a
willing to come,
starting
she was.
point.
wasn't
Yeah.
available.
Sure.
Yeah.
And she very well might have the answer. Maybe there
Yeah.
is things being done. I don't know. I know my previous world when I ran a juvenile facility, 2960 was or DHS, because we had both coming in, because we had a treatment facility, running treatment services, and that was the audits that you had, but PREA was, you know,
If I can summarize, I feel like the things is, what are the quality of resources? The source of data and the accountability for the juvenile facilities, right? And we have the list of the juvenile facilities that are licensed by DOC. And you can see gender here, so we can narrow down to those that are either serving girls or are listed as co-ed.
I want it for all, I mean.
I understand, but if we're prioritizing where we want to focus, that's what I feel like I've heard from this group. Is that not accurate?
Well, that's our task force.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
the girls. So
Yep.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
So we need Precious to come, when she's available, to come and explain how,
Be nice.
her understanding of how PREA works in the juvenile world. And maybe we could have licensing be there
And at the
too.
same time, yes, I will follow up with the enforcement and inspections team to find out how they are building this into their ongoing.
and I add that,
Go ahead, Maya.
sorry, I was just gonna say that I don't know, and they're making a lot of changes in licensing right now. So I don't know, but when I got my last licensing, like nobody asked me anything about Priya. So like this, there is a level of,
Yep.
I think us just deciding we're trying to do this right, you know, like, and so
But
we're
that's the right
trying
thing
and
to do.
right. I don't know what
Your
other
facilities
facilities are
will do that.
doing.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know what other facilities are doing. That's why I was like, they probably could just say they're doing it and who would know, you know, like, and again, they are making a lot of changes in licensing right now. I think it's been a little bit frustrating for those of us who are going through it because I don't think they're always communicating that great, but I think they're trying to make things better. So it might be part of the changes they're making, based on what you guys are saying of like the kind of conversations you guys are having, but I don't know, but I'm getting licensed again in November. So I will find out
Good job.
pretty soon.
Well, so, and part of, I mean, because this could be a task force recommendation, right? This is something tangible within our control to say something like, DOC, please, you know, include these questions in the licensing and also perhaps put some scaffolding around who would be the appropriate entity to do the audit. Like, I mean, I don't know the world of PRIA auditors, but you know, it has to be audited every so often and it needs to be done so by a certified or whatever third party.
And the
Would
PRIA
you-
standard is every 3 years.
Yeah.
An audit every
Yeah.
3 years by a PRIA.
It would
By a
be
PRIA
nice.
license.
So Maya, do you guys follow every 3 or do you do it more frequently?
We do it every 3 and the auditors are like, they're federal auditors. Like you have to engage them through, like, I think basically through the PRIA Resource Center, although they kind of, like you said, defunded it. Which it caused issues with our audit. Like we still got our audit, but she was like, I can't write your report in the official
Yeah.
auditor.
It's coming back. I mean, so just so everyone's aware that there was, I think, about a staff, I think it might have been like 17 staff that were in there and through the Doge moves that happened this spring. Actually, we were right in the middle of an audit day at Lina Lakes and we got the call from the National PRIA Resource Center, said we're shutting down today. And it was like, everybody's gone. You
And all
can't
your audit
upload your
materials on their
information.
website.
Well, then it slowly has trickled back to where they have
2 staff.
two full-time staff. They're managing the database, which we can upload information to. So, I mean, it's,
It's a bit of a mess.
yeah. So I think it's slowly, hopefully coming back.
Well, so in terms of frequency, I understand that 3 years is the standard. Do we know why it's the standard? And would there be a good basis to recommend more frequent audits in juvenile facilities, given the nature of?
What I would say is an audit is a fairly extensive process, takes about 6 months.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
make sense.
So,
Yeah.
that's part
It's
of it.
probably 2 to 3 days on site.
Yeah.
Then you get this interim report, which is 200 pages on several things that actually kind of cross with 2960, you know, security practices,
Yeah.
you know, movements, housing, those kind of things all kind of are similar. But the actual, you know, investigation process, the reporting processes, that availability for victim services.
So after they
Those
feel-
are really key pieces that are probably missing in a lot of places.
Yeah,
So we know
Would be
that.
that it would be like, and then send when you get the audit report, please send it to licensing. And then, you know, 6 months later, please send a summary of how you've corrected any issues.
So there is corrective action plan,
Yeah.
then there's 120 days to resolve, there's then a final report. Yeah, so it's a fairly lengthy process. The other thing is that the PRIA standard also requires us to report on a yearly basis, which is, so there's some reporting requirements that are separate from audit
Yeah.
And then
requirements.
who do you report to?
So we
It goes to the
report to
legislature.
we report our statistics to Bureau of Justice as one of the ones. And then we also send our
Report to the state.
report to the state. The governor has to actually write a letter to the BGA every year, or BGS, excuse me, and stating about compliance. You know, our facilities are in compliance, or maybe we have 8 facilities in compliance, 4 are in a corrective action period due to audits, you know, so it's just but
That's for
the governor
DOC
sends that letter.
facilities.
DOC facilities.
Well,
Yeah.
so that wouldn't
It's just
necessarily
DOC
be for the
facilities, yeah.
Could we, so there's not a federal requirement for the rest, or is there a federal requirement for the rest?
Well, so here's the
report
question.
in once a
So,
year.
so PREA applies to any custodial facility.
Oh, shit.
Right.
Okay.
So yes, but there,
Part of the
but without funding, right, so this is the old question, but, you know, so I think the thing is that any custodial facility is under the PREA law. So right,
But
but
just not
there's
anybody
no
out there
oversight,
enforcing.
there's no enforcement.
So
right?
like
There
Maya's
isn't any feds
facility,
that are running around
Are
saying,
choosing.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
pop in and
so
check
who,
you.
if she says, I'm gonna do my annual report, we just got audited, who do you send that
You
to?
don't send it to anybody, they're just compliant because they've done it.
Which is
There's
a
no
responsible thing to
Most
do.
of
Hank,
she's-
is
You just
to
have to have your own
oversee.
internal.
If they're
there's a
getting
corrective
federal
action.
funds. If they're getting federal funds.
But
They're not
who do they
getting
send it to?
Yeah, so
The
you
people in
finish your
Georgia?
annual report, do you just file it away in your own internal database, or do you send it?
We,
I don't know, because we
Maya,
get.
what does
Talking
Maya
about
do?
Maya.
right.
Tell us.
Yeah.
So I think we just keep it. Anybody could like, because it's public, technically anybody could request it. So like one of the things that I remember at some point was kind of an issue is like one of the counties that places with us asked for it as like proof that we're actually doing this because they were like, we're not
They
sending kids to
did?
facilities that don't. Yes.
All right.
And then, but yes, if there's corrective action, we have to send that back to the PREA auditor, like, and they put that kind of in the final report that we corrected it. So like one of the things, not this last PREA audit, but the one before, was that we weren't doing the rescreens that are supposed to happen before 30 days. So like we had to put a process in place to make sure we're getting that done and then report that back to the auditor. So in terms of the corrective action stuff, the level of accountability is still back to the auditor. But in terms of like who we report our PREA report to, like we mostly just, I think, keep it on hand to have it available if someone wants it.
So that could also be something, if we were to make it a recommendation, it would be something like, we would recommend that the DOC requires all licensed facilities to get a PREA audit every 3 years, right? And then,
I mean, I think the one thing that you might,
Show
I mean, that's
compliance.
already required under the PREA law.
Yeah.
But I think it might be really ask that licensing, ask. for the
Right.
proof
Let's
of PREA
verify
compliance.
first
Yeah.
that that
Part
is
of
Right.
happening or not happening.
and then do an annual.
It's beyond the report is, are people compliant? Like, will an investigator go out and do an investigation, a pre-investigation? What happens with that information? Is, if it's a substantial, is it reported? That's a mandatory report. I mean, what is happening if I'm a kid in a facility and I say, this staff person cornered me in the shower? So that's obviously under PREA unless I'm totally mistaken. What's the follow-up on that? So it's not just an annual report because reports don't protect kids. It's, are they following PREA the way you all are doing or wanting the facilities, the adult facilities to do? And when something bad happens, do they get this good stuff? That's what we need in the juvenile facilities, in addition to an annual report and then data analysis.
And one of the things on the audit, I mean, the auditor, when they go out, I don't know how many, they randomize poll, like
Yeah, staff and.
staff and incarcerated
residents.
and within various
Take a
categories, like one
Random
of them
sample.
is that they want to talk to an IP who is LGBTQ, right? I don't know, you know, so many, right? And it's randomized and you don't know ahead of time, right? Not that people can refuse to talk to the auditor, but, right, so they have categories. I mean, so the audit is, that's why having the federal auditors coming in, it's a pretty
It's pretty
intense.
comprehensive, and they want to know, like,
Comprehensive
when
coming
they
in.
pull one of this random sample, does your staff know what PREA is, you know, or how do you respond? And actually, we do pretty darn well with it. And then actually the incarcerated population too, you know, they'll pull in a, you know, I think in Rush City last week, 2 weeks ago, we were there, pulled in 45 different incarcerated people in different meetings and just,
Yeah, you had.
what do you know
somebody who
about
didn't
PREA?
speak
Help me
English,
understand, you
somebody
know, on a
who-
report. What would you do if this happened to you? And, you know, so then they'll take that information down. And I'm sure that they did that with you, Maya, also, you know, with the kids, probably.
Oh yeah, so they actually had us send them a list before they got here of all the kids who identify as essentially not being cisgender, or not being heterosexual, and so they had like a list of all of those kids, and then they picked, I think several, like not just one. I think you said one, but they picked several of those kids to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I mean, it is not the end answer, but I do think those are some things that are already, it's like, these are already requirements. It's just how are we tracking them as a starting
And
point.
enforcing them in a way that we could.
Right, and I mean, I think until we see what that is, so I'm assuming there'll be some places that say, here's our report, we've got it, boom, and there'll be places that'll be going, what?
Right.
You know?
What? I needed an
Like,
audit?
it's finding out what the current approach, like it's, Maya, I appreciate you because I feel like you're, bearing the brunt of a lot of questions of how this actually is happening in practice. So thank you for that. And I think I can get the information from the INE team about the current practices, the current way that they are asking questions. And then I think it comes back to also the intro work that you're starting to do, which is how to get some of these resources and supports available in juvenile facilities. And then there's the DHS part, which I just heard whisper, like, what is DHS's role and what do they do as part of this? I don't know the answer to that myself.
Yeah, and I think our team would be, if I can speak for my team, would be happy to be a resource for those type of facilities that are just at ground zero, right? I don't know what I would do. We could come in and advise them, give them the resources, and to a certain extent,
It says no.
No.
On all the juvenile facilities, Gina, what's wrong with you?
Nope.
We'll provide technical assistance.
Yeah, this is okay. Shut up, Schaefer.
Oh,
But you've stood up some really good models. And so,
yeah.
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
for that.
But I think Maya, you have a great model too.
Yeah.
For the
Absolutely.
juvenile world.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just trying to be in compliance with the law. Like, so most of the stuff that they were talking about, like, I'm like, yep, okay, yep, we do that, like, so I mean, I think this is good reinforcement that we're doing the right things over here. But yeah, I don't, again, I can't really speak to all the other facilities. I maybe should have thought to ask them before this meeting because I knew we were talking about this, but
But I
Yeah.
will say that the federal government with that law and that resource center, they have, to your point about building a framework, they have done a very good job of facilities that maybe aren't compliant, would want to be compliant. They can take those standards. There's a lot of information out there how to get in compliance. And I think, going from here to there to be compliant is probably not be that huge of a leap. There's a lot of those 2960 standards that kind of probably mix with it. So it's really the getting in there and seeing how big the problem is to what Crystal's point was.
We
Really
need a
to understand.
hotline for this in juvenile facilities, every juvenile facility. I love the
we have a
hotline.
Yeah, the
hotline.
fact that they
The
can.
hotline.
What's that?
We have a hotline.
Maya, do you have the hotline for us?
So we have we have an internal hotline
That's interesting.
that everybody's told about at intake, but they can also call like you guys, you have an external facility because that's what's required by law. Like you can also call an external facility to make a report, and that's also told to them at intake. So usually they get this information at intake and then also at orientation, which is usually like the same day. So there's kind of two reporting options in terms of that. There needs to be like basically availability for written reporting. So we have PREA boxes plus there's an email that you can do. So there's lots of access to ways to report.
You have a PREA
Here.
hotline?
Yeah, but
Where does it
it's
go?
internal.
It's just
So it's
internal.
internal.
They can also.
Yes,
call
so
that.
there's an internal one, and then there's the external program that they can call that has a 24-hour
And who's that?
That's through Alexandra House.
Yeah, they're also one of ours,
Okay.
right, for the Lima Lakes facility hotline.
Mm-hmm. And the pre-hotline, the internal one is checked every day.
I have a completely unrelated question. I mean, it's related to PREA, but not to this discussion. So if there's more to say about this part,
Oh, yeah, but you guys are gonna fix it. You're
Oh,
gonna bring
yeah.
in the, it's all gonna be taken care of.
So I've been to a lot of PRIA presentations, probably easily a dozen. And I've asked the question at quite a few. If PRIA distinguishes between consensual sex between incarcerated persons and, sexual assault. And I never get a clear answer. And I understand for sure.
We have a clear
consensual
answer.
sex
I think I have.
with another person or with oneself
Yeah,
even, I think is
consensual
against the
sex.
law or against the rules.
If it comes as a report, it is investigated to make sure that it is indeed, but if both parties say this was consensual sex, it is not a PRIA
It's a
investigation.
rule
It's a
violation.
rule violation.
Yeah, exactly.
And it goes over to discipline,
Right.
Yeah.
right? But we're very clear about that. So,
Okay, so there, yeah.
Yeah,
I've-
'cause-
But I've heard it presented as if any sex is PRIA.
No.
And I'm
That
like,
would
that
be
doesn't
with
seem
an
right.
inmate and a staff person.
Yes,
There
that
is
is all.
absolutely no
For
consent.
sure.
So Vicky, I think the history of that is for the longest time, and probably even now, people will tell you, there is no consensual sex in prison.
Exactly.
And they don't want to go further than
That's
that
not true.
to say, well,
Yeah.
yeah, there actually can consensual sex
Yes.
between two.
Yeah.
So.
Right, and I've heard the argument, that similar kind of argument where, well, there's no way to know. It's like, yes, there is. We
Mhm.
use that on the outside. There is a difference.
Right.
no, so we're
Right,
very
not all
clear.
sex is
I mean, that doesn't
assault.
mean
Yeah.
it always, we're clear and that's the advice that we
Okay.
Yeah.
put out there in training.
So we'll
Thank
look
you.
at, I mean, and we look at evidence if there's, cameras or if there's interviews and those kind of things. And to be honest with you, there is several times where it is consensual and we stop our work and
Yeah.
discipline then takes theirs. Yeah.
Yeah. I do know that perception, though, is different among women. At the prison, they think that even the touching of
Yeah.
someone else is going to be a PRIA violation,
Yeah.
And I
They're
think
mixing it up
that's,
with, What's-
Violation.
a what?
Consensual, not consensual, but I forget the term.
With getting hit by the prison for violating a rule.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think even that fear of brushing up against someone, they're so like sensitive to that because they think it's all PRIA. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's not right.
Well, I will
Yeah.
say this too, is that one of the things that I think Liz and I are both work well together on is that when we've inherited these roles, a lot of times, not to dissing anybody from my predecessors, but a lot of times PRIA is, people look at PRIA as this have to. We have to meet the regs. We want to really develop it as, this is a safety culture. This is
Amen.
a culture of safety on, everybody should know how to report. Everybody should know, that I can go to somebody for seek help and those kind of things. So I think that's one of the pushes that we're looking at in our discussions with facility compliance managers. It's like, okay, how are we're meeting the standards, but can we do this? We want our team to be looked at like a resource. So we've kind of developed a specific iShare site so people can go and pull posters off or pull this information off rather than us coming in and being the bad guy, right? I mean, I think there's a noticeable difference when you act as a resource and try to build a culture of safety versus, you have to comply, right?
Mhm.
Because then it's this resistance. So,
Good job.
yeah.
Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Fun to kind of tell everybody what we're doing, so, yeah.
So we will get over to the screening tools and the screening protocols. I mean, the other thing is we could send you the PRIA policies, which are just in their final stages of revision.
Yeah,
If you want to actually see the internal POC policies for PRIA, do you want that? How much
Are
information do
they
you
like
want?
hundreds of pages?
No,
no,
Talking
the
like
policies.
10 or 20.
we
I know
actually,
the PRIA law.
we've narrowed it from we think we have it down to 17 pages, so.
And a gazillion attachments. but
I think
Lots of
that'd be good.
It was,
attachments
yeah,
to
but
it,
we're.
but-
we're
And
going
it's just the policies
for
for,
DOC.
yep, and Red Wing. Okay, that'll be good because we'll need that when we start addressing it for the juvenile world.
Yeah.
Well, and when are you finalizing them?
These should be finalized in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, well,
right now,
we'll finalize
the
it. and then it goes
policy's
to the-
complete. We're
Yeah.
looking at
So-
going through every attachment right
This
now.
would
so.
also be a good opportunity for the task force to review them and weigh in with any suggestions
Mhm.
before they become actually implemented.
So we can
now-
certainly send them here for feedback as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, now is a good time for us to like think about it and think about any suggestions that we have.
Yeah,
My guess is in a few weeks, maybe a month,
yeah.
we'll be ready for review.
That would be helpful, because then when you all bring them to the DOC Executive Council that
Yeah,
essentially
I'll say-
reviews the policies, will be that this task force
Has
was
weighed in.
consulted and had an opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
how
great.
mechanically shall we go about giving input? I can do one of those links again that I sent out with the body worn camera policy where people can just put in their feedback anonymously or in person, or we can schedule it for the next task force meeting as an agenda item. And the expectation would be that everyone should review the policy before attending the meeting next month, and then we come up with our recommendations as a task force. I feel like that's the better way to do it, but
It is,
that too
but
big,
it's
though?
more work until, I mean, maybe we could do it both ways, like, we should take the time, I think, as a task force member, I should take the time, if you send it out,
Mhm.
I should take the time, if it takes an hour, to look through it,
Yep.
put my comments in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And be prepared.
Yes.
And then if there's, and then have it, but we have to ask ourselves to do that, and then if you're willing to come back. But I think we also need that
Well, I don't know that
precious
they,
information.
I don't know
for-
that they need to come back.
Well, I mean, what I would
You
say is,
wouldn't
is
have
You could
to
just
if we-
respond
if we do
back
it
as
that
a,
way, yeah.
maybe run it through the group and everybody adds their comments and then just get it back to us.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
That'd be
and then the
easier.
reality is most of the time I'm just upstairs when you guys are meeting.
Yeah.
If you're having a meeting and you're like, really, it would be helpful, you know, you could usually flag as
I
one of
mean,
us
if you
might be
want,
available.
well, would you like to attend that? Now, if, it sounds like we're leaning in the direction of adding this as an action agenda item for the next month. Would you like to be here for that or
What
not?
I would say is I would be on standby.
And I could jump on remotely, probably.
Yeah.
Good question.
Fall colors coming.
I mean,
I'm
like
not
if it's-
coming back down here until April.
Well, so then, does anyone oppose doing that at our next meeting?
Are we missing some, are we gonna have some holdovers from this meeting?
What do you mean?
Things on the agenda. you can get to.
Angel, didn't-
Conference.
I don't know if Angel left.
I think, I don't see anybody.
Her camera's
Well,
off.
so we have time, Angel has 15 minutes, so we have time to get to that. If we go now, so.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean.
Can
it
we have
seems-
Precious here by that time? For the next agenda from DHS, we need to get her the juvenile stuff too.
Are we gonna do that all at one time, though?
I don't think we can do that all at
Technically,
one
they
time.
don't. I think that's.
No, I know they don't, but I think we,
Yeah.
somehow we need.
It seems that the policy is the most pressing issue that we need to address now before it goes up to the DOC head committee. So I'm making a motion. I don't know if chairs are allowed to make motions, but I'm doing it anyways.
We don't have quorum anyway.
Oh, all right, well, I'm making a motion that at our next meeting, we agree to have read the policy and then we talk about our recommendations at the next meeting.
That assumes you will be done, ready to send it out to us in a month?
When will you be ready to send it out to us? Because we would need a week or two to be able to actually read it and think about it before the next meeting.
Oh, yeah. We could send it out by next week.
Perfect.
But
Okay.
just so you're all understanding that this is the draft.
Draft, yeah.
It's not the final,
Sure. You
and
have
that's
a good
where you
draft.
can punch holes and.
And then we have to put it through our internal, right, but
Totally.
yeah, so we'll make sure we have comments from you before we send it through the internal.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really nice way that we can all collaborate and that we
Well-
can like be proactive as a task force as well, instead of like just attacking stuff on the back end.
And I do think
Yeah,
too,
right.
the policy, well, it's not your issue, but you know, what I mean, your concerns. I think we would be better informed the following month after doing that to
Yeah.
try to see what we want to recommend for juveniles, once we've read through it. And
Yeah, I mean, I would say the policy stuff is clearly just the DOC internal policy.
Adults, yeah.
It's not. gonna touch
So we
those
will
other
not
issues.
distribute. So any objection to tackling the policy conversation?
Yeah.
Correct. Hearing none. Okay, that's what we'll do then.
Okay.
All
Well,
right, so
then I think we're
then
gonna take them.
if you get the drafts over to Shelby, she will send it to us and then
Perfect.
task force members and Shelby, maybe you could just send it out to everyone with a little reminder that we all agreed to review it and think about our comments prior to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you guys so
Also
much.
get the other things requested over.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, we have some
Thanks
good
for
stuff.
having us. Good to see you.
I'm not gonna take your board.
I will. I will. I keep in touch with them. so-
Okay.
Excellent.
If you want it, you can have
I
it.
do.
You can have it.
Thank you for my juvenile stuff. We have to do.
Do you want these back or? can you
Thanks,
keep
Liz.
them?
Nope, those are for you guys. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to beforehand.
Good to see you.
See you, Gina.
But yeah, we have to get that on the agenda.
Okay.
Hi, Angel.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. More. you said that.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't.
Okay. I think everybody there, whoever is, I wasn't here in the beginning during introduction. So my name is Angel. I am a person of lived experience. I advocate for youth, but I advocate for a numerous amount of things. And then as time has been going by, I also am a life and motivational speaker as well. So I do a lot of speaking. One of the things that I wanted to share is for those that did or didn't attend the conference last year in 2024, I was dealing with things that have came up years later of not receiving my high school diploma. So one of the stories is I spent majority, basically my whole childhood in the child and welfare system. So group homes, residential treatment centers, and facilities and things like that. And as much as you guys know that it is an obligation every day to get up every day and go to school. And as a child, it is what we do, and then the adults or the guardians make sure that the paperwork and the communication and the transcripts and the credits are all kept safely. And so eventually getting out the system, as far as I knew, I had did the work and it was done and I should have graduated, but when they told me that I couldn't, I was like, okay, fine. And I guess I won't be getting that. And life was life, and I kind of moved on with life. But as having children and things like that, and realizing something is not right, I went to school every day. I got to figure out what happened to my diploma, and I did. I reached in places that most people wouldn't think to reach to. I contacted commissioners, Department of Education, anybody that I could get a hold of that would listen. Even when I thought I sounded crazy, I still kept telling them what was going on. I received a lot of no's. I received a lot of no's of, yep, we hear you, we see what's going on, but there's nothing that we can do. I was never looking for any type of lawsuit or anything like that. I just wanted what was owed to me. I tracked down paperwork that you wouldn't believe is hard to get to, but it happened. All of these facilities that I grew up going to, most of them closed down. We're talking about places all the way in Wisconsin down to Texas, Iowa. They just have been shut down. They no longer existed. I found all of that paperwork and all of those credits and all of those transcripts. And they would tell me, well, no, we don't have that. Don't worry about it. I got it. And I lay it on their desk. And they could see the story of the irresponsibility back in those days. I know the educational system has changed today compared to what it was back then, but I am concerned for the kids that are going from place to place. The focus is not necessarily their education. It becomes an expectation when you're in those facilities. But is it a focus, and are we making sure that they are keeping those records safe and that they have them? Because I could only imagine how many children are saying in the system, no, I did that already. I completed that. I finished that. And they're told otherwise. I think another thing is we were seeing documentation for me of IEP meetings as a child that nobody attended to, but paperwork was signed off. They were making decisions without even there being a meeting. So We had social workers signing it off that could not attend. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what the accommodations or the plans were going to be, but 25 years later, I'm seeing paperwork saying nobody was there, but it was signed and let's move forward. You go ahead. You had a question. I'm sorry.
You're on mute, Maya.
You're muted, Maya.
Okay, sorry. I was just really appreciative that you're bringing this up. On a personal level, my son has had an IEP, and during this process, I've been thinking, you guys are used to just railroading over families, like it made me want to quit my job and go advocate for kids because I was like, other people's parents don't know their rights, and I'm that mom, first of all. But I was like, other kids, I know that they're just doing whatever, but I have a girl who just graduated from our program, or she graduated from the school here at the juvenile center, and she needed like 1 credit to graduate at the end of the school year, so she graduated in the summer in our summer school program, and they said, we're just going to mail you your diploma. And it is one of my biggest concerns is that that diploma is going to go missing. I don't, she's not going to the most stable of places, so I'm not sure she'll even be there when the diploma gets there. And even if she is, are they really gonna send it? Like, I have a lot of concerns about this.
So I do have a lot of contacts after my journey and being able to get mine done. I have a lot of contacts to help support that and make sure that she gets that diploma. There are record keepers vaults. After a certain amount of time, they tell you that they're not there, but they are there. They're just in old vaults. I don't know if they're electronical these days or if they really do have to go in the basement, like you see on the movies, and look for those files. But they are there. Um, I did get it. I did get my diploma. I graduated and walked in May, and did a speech for Hennepin County. Um, so thank you. I did do that. But it is a big, I think, thing that we aren't looking at. And there's a lot of people that don't know about it. Records are kept at the Department of Education. That's where you can call to get your transcripts and things like that. And I talked to numerous people through the Department of Education. They knew nothing about how it works and facilities and who to contact. That was the hard part, is because everybody did direct me to the Department of Education. But once you got to them, they were like, we don't have anything to do with this. We wouldn't know how that process goes, who to reach. But the information should have been handed to them because they're the ones that they're basically a big, huge vault. They just keep the files, the transcripts, and the diplomas and things like that. And those are who's getting those things in these facilities. So that's the biggest question for the kids that are going to school in residential facilities, is where is their documentation going to? And does the Department of Education know how it is ran in these facilities? And what the transcript should be look like. That was another big problem, is what the transcript looked like compared to if one of you guys that completed high school in a regular high school, what your transcript looked like. Those in residential facilities or even juvenile correctional facilities, they get credit for therapy, for therapeutic services that they receive during the day. Any treatment groups are counted as electives. And so when the transcript does go to the Department of Education, it shows nothing. It shows that they did nothing. And so then it looks like they're missing a bunch of credits, but they don't offer certain electives in those residential facilities. It's just, it doesn't work. So they do, treatment and therapy and things like that. So to really pay attention, because of how many kids that should have probably have been done, go back into the community, go back to school. And they're like, I have another 2-3 years before I can even graduate. I'm missing so many credits that it's not possible, is transferring those credits that they are making in these facilities and the work that they're doing while they're in these facilities. How is that being transferred to the community schools and when they go back to school, to make it to balance out? That was one of the big things too that I had to fight for. It was I, as a child, did what I was supposed to do. I don't know how you guys are supposed to transfer that back, but as far as I know, I did it. So we're gonna have to get these therapeutic classes and the treatments and everything in. You can add those as an elective, and I got my credits. Of course, some things, no matter how hard you fight, never come for free. So they insisted I do one more class, and I got that done within a month. And um, I walked, and um, there's a lot of things that I want to do when it comes to advocating for our youth, but I think that's back there too. That education piece is I'm curious to know after my journey what that looks like for these kids in there.
I think, Angel, first of all, you are a miracle worker. You are resilient and you're like a dog with a bone. You do not give up. Most of our kids don't have all that or have people like you. So good for you. So I know Maya had a question about who would they call at Department of Ed, but I think for us with our priority issue that we talked about last time, we have to make sure that we have a recommendation in the juvenile stuff about education, somebody tracking down youth credits, because again, it's amazing that you're able to do it. I know you had help from legal folks, from advocacy groups, and then just your own internal drive to find that information, which is great. But I think we have to include I think a recommendation when we
Yes.
sit down and start doing our recommendation. So I know you'll remind us.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
You're
Angel,
welcome.
I have a question too. In all of your work, did you find anything out about laws on how long they have to keep records? Because I know for different fields, it's different lengths of time, where then they can just get rid of it.
So they say electronically or something that I can look. I think it's like 5 years.
Okay.
5 years
That's
is what they can keep. But if it's a facility that has closed, it kind of varies because they don't really need to sit on it, so it's somewhere. I did find like an ancient vault of education that in St. Paul, Ramsey County, they're holding a lot of old files from facilities that closed. That was probably the.
Do we know, has
Go ahead.
anyone gone through those to send them to the Department of Ed? Is that like what needs to happen with all these old dusty documents?
I would honestly say that is a fabulous idea. Those facilities that have closed and those files that they have and that they put away for education needs to go to the Department of Education.
Well, and I think there's a risk.
It should.
If there's a time frame, like I know in behavioral health, it's 7 years. And so let's say if my clinic closes and it's been sitting there and I say, oh, look, that was 7 years ago, I'm going to try to get rid of it, right? If I have to get out of the building or whatever. So there is a risk, I think, with some of that stuff, the longer it sits. Going nowhere.
They
But I
couldn't.
think the Department of Ed, have you talked to the Department of Ed about how much the State Department of Ed, how long they have to keep records? And then there's all the.
So they
school
keep
districts.
records. They keep records for a very long time. The
Yeah,
problem
schools.
was that they had no jurisdiction on who sent them what.
Right.
And so if it got to them, they would have had it, but it never got to them from these counties. So like me, I grew up being a ward of the state.
Right.
And I grew up being a ward of the state. And so my guardians was whatever county that I was living in. And it was their responsibility, just like me being a parent, to make sure I communicate those things from one district to another. Some of those things just were not being passed back and forth. And so I had to go back to those districts and their county, have them go look in the vaults, and then grab it and give it to the Department of Education. So if they would have it, it's just those facilities and those school districts didn't hand it up. It just never got to them. And that was what.
Sorry, Angel.
We had to do. No, it's okay. We had to do a lot of, another thing we found out is who was paying for these education. I never knew that education at that time was paid for from a any district within that county that that child came from. And they're in charge of those documents and paying for that kid while they're all the way in Texas. And so I had to do a lot of that and figure out who was paying for my education when I was in Texas, then get a hold of them and see why they didn't receive files and why that wasn't transferred. It's a lot.
Crystal, go ahead. A question for you, Angel, and then also just a potential suggestion for a next step, or one of many, I think. That is, the legislature has passed some statutes regarding post-secondary education institutions that have closed and what's supposed to happen with student records and access to student records. So that could be something to look at as like how that particular
I have to get
thing, right.
documentation from people all
All the
the
time.
time through those closed.
So it could be something to look at and see whether there's just lessons learned for how that's already happening within a different educational system. And then Angel, did you ultimately find a person or the team in MDE who is responsible for this? So do you know who that is?
There is no team MD that is responsible for this. They just don't know what that looks like for those that are in facilities or in the juvenile facilities going from place to place. They're just, from my understanding and talking to the people that I've talked to, if they could have helped, they would have. But they don't know much about what it looks like in these facilities. You know what I mean? They're just holding transcripts and information. So they were not responsible. The biggest part was the district and back then, because I'm 36 years old, so back then it was different, but would have been the social workers and the guardian that were responsible for me back then is who would have been responsible for that.
So wouldn't MDE, they used to have somebody who went into the facilities for education. Lachlan Stewart was one. Didn't you work?
I don't know
MDE?
that. No.
Oh, okay, never mind. I'm looking at you like, so I think there has to be somebody designated for youth and custody facilities, and I think.
I have
I
somebody
did-
I work with at MDE that I can ask.
Okay, good. That would be great.
I did talk to somebody who was responsible for that exactly role, but they knew nothing about that. They didn't really even understand what I was trying to tell them. Like it's a different lifestyle when you're coming from living in places like that.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like they didn't know where to start. And so I just kept going from there.
Yeah, I think we all have to go. It's like almost 12.
Can we add to November agenda, the Ramsey County Girls Report, which is a game changer for everything we're talking about, and Hawaii? Shelby?
Yeah.
Will you add Hawaii and their girls? I don't even know how you like.
program.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Ramsey County Girls Report, which is going to be out and amazing for all of us.
This is an excellent transition, if I may. Shelby is noting those things, but also so is Don, who is the other person behind the computer screen back there.
I don't see it.
There he is. His name's Don.
Yeah, I was like, who's that person?
So actually Shelby is going to be shifting.
No.
I know. Shelby's amazing, but is going to be spending more time at the Stillwater facility and doing a lot of work around the Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act. Don does a lot of work with other task forces for DOC already and commission, so Sentencing Guideline Commission, the new task force on mandatory minimums. So Don is going to be our expert organizer moving forward.
Okay.
And he and I work very closely together already as well. So that was a good opportunity to let you know that yes, Don is here and is going to be here moving forward.
So
By appreciation for Shelby. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Shelby, for everything you've done. And good luck at your new position.
Before we end officially, we have 1 minute left. I just want to follow up. Angel, what if anything do you think that we can do to help or address this, or like, what are your thoughts?
As addressing the educational piece?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think there just really was no, there was no accountability. I think that was the biggest piece is there's no accountability. I know there was other youth that have been in the same situation, and I don't, they've never seen anything, what I did happen. Nobody else has said anything or they didn't think it was possible. And I was that kid at one point too, or actually adult, where it took me 3 years to get this done. 3 years,
do
and
you-
people said I was crazy. So I don't know.
Do you get a sense that this is an ongoing issue or is it something that has been remedied over the years?
Oh, yes, this is an ongoing issue for
Okay.
sure.
So this is something
for
that I
sure,
think the
for sure.
task force should keep on our agenda as an item to focus on at some point. Does everybody agree
Yes.
with that? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we noted that as well, so. Thank you for sharing that. That
Yeah,
sounds
thank you.
incredibly
Thank
like
you.
frustrating and it's so refreshing to hear that despite the fact that you shouldn't have had to do all that, you made it and you got it.
Yes, yes.
So.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See everyone next month.